in the throes of our Kickstarter campaign, and our first meeting with the NHL actually happened December 29th, 10 years ago, and was actually wondering if we've done the right thing here. Like, should we have even created Pride Tape? You'd see so much hate. You're driving down the street and you see somebody either walking to an outdoor rink, like a small kid, and he's got, his skates over his shoulder and a stick with Pride Tape in his hand. Exactly what you said, Andrew. We said the exact same thing at the beginning. Our goal was always just to help one person, because when we did the Kickstarter, we had no idea what success looked like. We hadn't done a Kickstarter campaign before.
Welcome back to the Pride and Puck podcast. This is episode 33. This is the final episode for season 3 in 2025. It's been an amazing year. I thank everyone for listening, tuning in, whether it's in podcast form or on YouTube, and following, liking, subscribing, doing all that sort of stuff, and sharing the podcast around to helping it grow. We've ticked over 900 followers on Instagram. Instagram seems to be the biggest platform that we have, that we get the most interaction on. So ticked over 900 followers on Instagram, which is really cool. So hopefully we can hit the 1,000 mark at the start of 2026, which would be absolutely awesome, and keep growing from there. I'll put out the call for 2026 and season 4 for guests. It's actually filling up pretty quick. So there's a few spots still remaining. So if you want to come on and be a guest and tell your story, reach out to the podcast via DM or email at doogieDigital@gmail.com. We can have a discussion and get some more people on to tell their stories within hockey and queer hockey. So there's plenty out there to tell. So with all that said, and someone who actually has played a big role in getting Pride and Puck podcast to that plus 900 followers mark on Instagram, they do a great job of actually collaborating and sharing our stuff and being a big supporter of the podcast, which is really cool. Something I never actually expected when I launched the podcast. But to finish off 2025 and season 3, I would like to introduce Jeff McLean from Pride Tape, co-founder, all the way over in Edmonton, Alberta. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you, Andrew. Great to see you. And very honored to be invited today.
We did have a bit of a discussion just before we hit record, and I did say I love your backdrop. You are in Alberta, in Edmonton, but you have the Calgary Flames Johnny Gaudreau frame, the late Johnny Gaudreau in the background, which was a really nice touch. As I am a Flames fan, that I don't say too loudly these days.
Well, my friend Emma from the Calgary Flames sent that to me a number of years ago. I went down. I've been going to the Flames Pride games as well as the Oilers, and the Flames have been incredibly grateful and supportive, as have all 32 teams. So she sent me that photo, and then obviously, unfortunately, what happened to Johnny and his brother, I just felt it's fitting, and the fact that you're a Flames fan, Andrew, hey, it just works today. I do have some other prints that, depending on what the who I'm talking to, can go up on the wall. So yeah.
I love that though. I really do. As I did mention, like, Pride Tape has been amazing for the podcast actually to help it grow. And I remember speaking to people from Harbour Lights as well over here when they got going, and they said how much Pride Tape had played a massive role in actually helping their socials grow. How does that make you feel as one of the co-founders of Pride Tape and someone who's heavily involved in the social media, of running the social media for Pride Tape? And how does it make you feel to get that sort of feedback, I suppose, from myself and from people like Harbour Lights to help the growth of these inclusive clubs?
Well, it's absolutely incredible. And I chatting with Dean, one of the partners in Pride Tape, who basically gets all the tape out there to everybody around the world. I think he said at one point that Australia per capita is the greatest supporter in the world for Pride Tape. I think that's due, in fact, to what you're doing, and certainly Stuart and the others there with the Harbour Lights and the Southern Lights. Love the jersey, by the way. But one of the highlights for me, I mean, every day there's pinch me moments. I mean, yesterday I got 3 or 4 requests from around the world for tournaments that are coming up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the Gold Coast in BC, and the EIHL, the Pro League in the UK. We're doing something with them now coming up in January. Like there's requests every week, and it's just, again, it's sometimes hard to fathom and believe. I mean, we still volunteer our time with Pride Tape. We have our day jobs and we do this off the corner of our desk, but we try to talk to as many people as we can, because like yourself and getting to meet Stuart at the Seattle Pride tournament in the summer a couple of years ago was like a huge highlight for me to meet Stuart and Dash and Jamie. And again, because we'd been having a lot of conversations just online and with respect to the support from Australia and how important that is to their teams and to us. I think it's just very reciprocal. But like what we always say, Andrew, is we just make tape, you make it powerful. Like if it's the folks out there, like Pride Tape isn't even a company, it's an idea. It's not even a product anymore, it's a conversation. So anybody that believes in it, that supports it, we try to support them wherever you are. But again, the getting to actually meet the folks that believe in what we're doing is really the big highlight for me. So, getting to go to some of the tournaments this week, last Saturday, I was able to meet Nancy, who's one of the photographers for the PWHL and the new Vancouver club. And she was out here shooting the rivalry series that I went to. And just getting to actually meet these people in person that have been so supportive all these years that's really the highlight for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's really cool. It's interesting too that you mentioned about Pride Tape and how it's not a company, it's an idea, and and how people make it powerful. I sort of relate that to this podcast a little bit as well, because when I launched this podcast, I wanted it to be almost like a vehicle that the guests drove. So there was no sort of gotcha questions, things like that. It's like you lay it out and you let me know what you want to talk about, your story, what you want to include, because I felt like it's so with the LGBTIQ plus community. It can be so dangerous out there sometimes that you can't obviously release a lot of information because you just need that protection. So it was really interesting that you mentioned that about Pride Tape, because I feel like that's sort of similar with this podcast as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was chatting with family and friends this week because I've been wrestling with this notion of perhaps doing a book around our 10th anniversary and celebrating all the people that have been. It's not Pride Tape's story, it's their story. But when you think about that, is the last thing we've ever wanted to do is put anybody in harm's way. And as you know, with the podcast and similarly with social media, we do a lot of reposting. It's not necessarily original content because we don't want, or we always check with people first if we're putting something out original to make sure that we're okay. But the last thing that we want to do is put anybody in harm's way. And unfortunately, it's very scary out there. And sometimes, when we reflect back on the 10 years, we often say 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Every time we think we're making inroads and making the game and the sports we love more inclusive, something happens and it makes us think about what we want to do moving forward. So that's been a big part of our discussions lately, because it's so retrospective, because it's now right now it's our 10th anniversary. We'd be in the throes of our Kickstarter campaign, and our first meeting with the NHL actually happened December 29th, 10 years ago. So it's gone by quick. I'd like to think, thanks to you and everyone else that believes in what we're doing, that we're moving forward. However, there are days where it honestly can be a little disconcerting about the way people are acting towards one another.
across those 10 years and the changes in, I suppose, social media, and for some people, they'll say, and even I'm like this a little bit, sometimes I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, and sometimes you think, geez, it'd be nice to go back when there was no social media, but it is such a vehicle that we need to use these days. You sort of can't live without it in terms of podcasts and Pride Tape, and especially things like that, I suppose. How much have you seen social media change over the years? I know we sort of talked before we came on, and the podcast, I don't use X anymore because I just don't feel like it's quite a safe place. Even I noticed on YouTube, I've put up an episode or a reel or a short on YouTube, and you get comments, just hateful comments on there that I have to moderate across the socials. How do you safeguard yourself, I suppose, from that sort of stuff? Do you take a time out, or when you're dealing with the social media comments? And how much has it changed since you've launched Pride Tape 10 years ago? That have you seen across social media?
I've seen it change quite a bit. We chatted about Twitter or X. I personally found that Twitter was a hotbed for hate. And years ago, like when we first started, I personally got too wrapped up into the comment sections and was getting extremely depressed, and was actually wondering if we've done the right thing here. Like, should we have even created Pride Tape? You'd see so much hate. But on Instagram, we purposely decided, like, we had this, big conversation in around the blue check mark. Should we get the blue check mark? Do we want to open ourselves up to more, let more people know that we're out there? And, because we volunteer for Pride Tape, we said to ourselves, like, unfortunately, we want to talk to everybody and engage and learn more stories and just get out there and be available to more people. But with our day jobs, we only have so much time. So we had this theory of, like, we go where the love is. So we were like, we don't want the blue check mark, because we, like, I think we have it now. I'm not even sure, to be honest with you. But when we opened ourselves up, to more hate. And we're like, you know what? We want to spend the time with the people that believe in what we're doing, that are supportive, that's making the sports and hockey more inclusive. And that's where we want to spend our time. So, there's been moments where I've personally come up with some pretty controversial posts that I really wanted to post because I was angry. But then I thought, I'm just fueling the hate and just throwing that back out there. And that's not who we want to be. We want to be positive. We believe love wins. It's love over hate. And so that's the space we take up. So, we are constantly thinking about, who we are. I mean, Pride Tape is, like we said, it's not a company, but it's still a brand, and it's something that means something to certain people. So we just want to be mindful that we're respectful of who those folks are. And we also say too, as far as age groups go, like we have a lot of young people that love Pride Tape, that use Pride Tape, believe hockey is for everyone. So we just want to make sure that what we say out there is for everyone as well. And we just want to focus on the positivity and the love side of it, because it can get hateful pretty quick. And like I said, I got caught up in a lot of the negativity early on. And like you mentioned, timeouts. I had to give myself a few timeouts over the years because of, what it was creating.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Absolutely, starting this podcast and seeing a lot of comments, and you can get yourself trapped in a rabbit hole. And I've sort of come to realize that the world is not social media. Once you get off social media, you find that there is a lot of beautiful people out there, and love absolutely does win majority of the time.
Yeah.
I was thinking as well before we came on, Pride Tape has been around for 10 years, and it's pretty cool that we're chatting now at the 10-year mark. It's aligned quite well. But I wanted to know a little bit about you, in case people who might be tuning in for the very first time, but they might not even have heard of Pride Tape before. Who knows? Do you remember the first time that you fell in love with hockey?
Yeah, well, Canadian. I think it's a rite of passage. I started playing hockey when I was 5. I played till competitively, very poorly, I'll tell you. I finished with juvenile junior C type ranks. I was not a very good player. In fact, I'm not proud of this, but I did get kicked out for life for some various stick infractions. But I just I've always loved hockey growing up. My dad played recreationally, and so my brother and I played, and I just loved it. And then growing up, my dad was in the Canadian Armed Forces, so we moved around a lot, including West Germany, and we were a little bit of a traveling team on the base, so we played in a whole bunch of different countries in Europe. And our goaltender, who became my best friend, is Bill Ranford, who won the Conn Smythe Trophy. He played, I think, 15 years in the NHL, and he's been coaching now for 17 years. So I've been very fortunate to be around the hockey world, thanks to Bill and all of his accolades. So yeah, it's like I always get to say that I've got to like rise to the level of NHL without not being able to skate, so it's been pretty cool. A lot of fun hockey stories over the years.
I'm thinking, what's that saying? So between the two of you, you're both the Conn Smythe winners or something along those lines.
Yeah. Well, I always say that, with the Pride Tape stick in the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2017, they put one of the sticks from the Oilers skills competition, which actually wasn't Pride Tape. It was 6 different colors of tape. It was the idea while we were trying to raise money for the Kickstarter campaign, which would have been in full swing 10 years ago today. So they put one of those sticks in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I was lucky enough to go there and see that. But for the players that are in the Hall of Fame, if they sign something for you, they will put HHOF and the year they were put into the Hall of Fame. So I signed my name now, Jeff McLean, HHOF 17. So
that's amazing. Yeah. So we've got a Hockey Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
on the podcast.
Yeah, I get ribbed for that quite a bit by Dean, but yeah, we have fun with it.
Well, that's my claim to fame. Then I can claim the Hall of Fame off you. So it
Sure.
Works out well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you ever think back then, or well before, I suppose, like obviously you said it's a rite of passage, Canadian hockey. It's sort of that well-known thing across the world. If you're Canadian, you skate before you can walk. That's all the sort of things you hear. Did you ever think back then you'd be involved in something so influential in hockey, or was it ever an idea to be involved in something so influential in hockey?
Never. I mean, my day job is I work for an ad agency here in Edmonton. I've been doing that for over 30 years across the country. I've worked everywhere from Vancouver to St. John's, Newfoundland, and my family's in Ontario, in the Toronto area. So with this project, working with Dr. Chris Wells and my boss at the time, Frank Calder, when we started the Pride Tape project, we actually were fortunate enough to have some contacts with the Oilers. So we spoke to the captain at the time, Andrew Ferentz, who still works with us a lot. And he now works at the head office in New York at the NHL. So that's kind of where it got started. But then we had our first meeting with the NHL about the Pride Tape idea on December 29th, 10 years ago. And, that phone call with Paul, who's become a friend, just kind of lifted it off. And then he called back about 2 weeks into January and just said, whatever you do with the tape, we want to help. And from that point on, I think the biggest thing that I'm most proud of is that when we, right at the very beginning, I would call the NHL, or I would maybe need to know the answer to a question, and I could call, any one of the senior, VPs at the NHL, and they would always, and these are really busy folks, and just trying to be respectful, but they always took my call. And that's what really clued into me, like, wow, this is something that this idea has garnered, the respect from some people very high up in hockey. So then I got to tell my mother that, see, I did eventually make the NHL. So now that I could, and we did get to go to the head office in New York, and their new office, and they've got, it's really impressive, and they have these huge screens that go up like 3-4 floors, and they had the Pride Tape logo on all the screens, and welcoming us. And I was just like, is this really happening? Like, is this real? But everybody there, and everybody that we have been fortunate enough to work with, yourself, everybody in Australia with the teams, and Martin with Hockey is Diversity in Berlin, and you could just go on for hours. It's an exercise in name dropping, but everybody has been so incredibly nice and so incredibly supportive. So that's again why we just say, like, it's really not us. It's not our story. It's everybody else's story, and I would love the opportunity to tell it. I did a speaking engagement last summer in Winnipeg at the hockey conference, and it was one of the best moments of my life. It was speaking to just about like a side room of about 45 people, getting to tell the Pride Tape story, and I received like a number of very emotional and meaningful questions and answers from people as to what it meant to them personally and to their community. And I just walked out of there and was thinking to myself, like, I think it was the first moment where I was introspective and going, this is really something.
It's is thinking about the whole launch of the NHL, getting that meeting with the NHL, and you mentioned Andrew Ference, and then I think about, I'm into my second season now of hockey, so late starter, but absolutely enjoying actually playing the game that I love now. But when I look across even our local beer leagues here, I'll see teams, and obviously Southern Lights, it's quite visible. Obviously, that it's an inclusive club. You've got the logo, the colours. Everybody knows about Southern Lights here in Victoria. But when I look at other teams, and when I'm playing opposite teams, you'll see Pride Tape, whether or not it's on a goalie stick, it's someone else's stick. It could be just a little at the end of the stick, not actually on the blade. Was there a moment where there was a grassroots club or a grassroots player that really sort of, I suppose maybe kickstarted Pride Tape in that grassroots sense? Is probably maybe not the right word, but where it really took off from a grassroots sense? Like, was there a certain club or a person at the grassroots level that really helped Pride Tape sort of get on that way?
Wow. I mean, there's so many. I mean, when I talked to Joey and Steven at Seattle Pride Hockey, and about how, the relationship between the two of them, about how they saw the Pride Tape and how they started Seattle Pride Hockey, and then talking to Stuart there in Seattle about how really the movement started in Australia. There's actually, I've been hearing a lot of like cross-pollination of Pride Tape with different players going to different tournaments and seeing it on somebody's stick and going, what's that? What's it about? Somebody tells their story, and then it just grows exponentially. But I think, to try and answer your question, grassroots, living in Edmonton, it's cold most of the time. We have a lot of outdoor rinks. I have one right at the end of my street. And what's cool is you're driving down the street and you see somebody either walking to an outdoor rink, like a small kid, and he's got, his skates over his shoulder and a stick with Pride Tape in his hand. And another one was I was rounding the corner from my house, and I saw two women who had curling brooms in their hands, and they were walking down to the curling rink, and they had Pride Tape on their curling brooms. And I had to pull over and get out and ask them, like, what do you think about this tape? And I think I usually scare people, like, who is this guy? Right. But I think it's just those happenstance moments, like those random moments of where you just see it in a place that you don't expect it. Like when you go into a rink, on the weekend or whenever, and visiting friends and seeing people play, and you see tape on the stick or someone's stick, it's still very, very cool. It's still meaningful that because I still know that it takes courage to put it on your stick and use it. In fact, I've had friends, older guys like me, playing beer league hockey still, and still getting chirped with the tape on their stick and still getting some hate. And you're going, and still having those conversations with people in their own team that are against it. And so, yeah, I applaud the people that still think it's important, because actually we're not out there checking everybody in every arena, but I think, just from what we see on sales, et cetera, like it has dropped off. Not entirely sure of that reason. I mean, we could talk about what's going on in the world, but for those that still continue to use it, especially the young people, see it a lot with, hear a lot of stories about the relationship and the conversations between parents and their kids, whether the kids are asking the parents to get it or buy it and so they can use it, or, the other way around, where the parents have the tape and the kids want to use it, however that happens. But for us, we always started, and still to this day, if people, want pride tape either on the team or in the tournament or whatever, we have always said to put the tape in the center of the room, and for anybody that wants to use it can use it. We don't walk around a dressing room and handing a roll of tape out to every person to use it. We in fact want the people that believe in its message to use it. And if that's not everybody, that's okay, because I think when people do use it, it actually makes it more special.
Yeah, I think that's where the power comes from as well. When you have that, just sticking it in the middle of the room, and then you let the people make their decision. I think that's where you get the power of pride tape coming through. I have to admit, though, that I actually haven't used it yet on my stick. So I'm sitting here talking with you about pride tape, and I haven't. I mentioned on my previous episode with Amy Stevens that it's just black tape on my stick, but I have to get some pride tape on there at some stage.
Well, I will tell you, Andrew, again, one of the, not necessarily surprises, but the nice things that we've seen over the years is the creativity of the fans and the people that utilize it. For example, like even when there's bans or certain situations, is never underestimate the cleverness of folks. And when the first NHLers cut the tape up and put it in their number on the back of their jerseys, we saw fans doing that. You'll see players going, well, I don't want to upset my ritual of my black tape or my game tape, but they'll put it on the shaft of their stick, like down by the blade, so the cameras will pick it up. They'll do other things with their helmets. So I think that's actually pretty cool. And what raises the visibility of it all is just the creativity of people and the different things they're able to do it. We've seen it at the university hockey level with people using it on their socks, and again, their helmets and other places, just so people pick it up. And again, we've seen it at the last Winter Olympics, people wrapping it around their fingers. One woman on the Chinese luge team, potentially put themselves in harm's way by doing that, and for that to go on television, knowing what's going on in some of those countries. So it's pretty mind-boggling sometimes. It's just but also incredibly hopeful to see the creativity of these athletes.
Yeah, that's super cool. I was just thinking as well, you're talking about the sales of pride tape, and obviously people would know that we had the whole situation with the NHL recently and the pride tape and pride nights and things like that. Does it seem like there's a bit of a correlation between that and the lack of sales, or is it still you're still working through that as pride tape to sort of, or is there no correlation at all in terms of the sales?
I don't think so. In fact, there's an irony involved where the attention from that situation, we never sold more tape in our history by far. Like, it was exponential, again, because the ban was 10 days. And I spoke to every major news outlet in the world. Like, and it was funny. I was in between jobs, my day job. So I was back home at my parents' for Canadian Thanksgiving, and my phone was blowing up, and it was ESPN and CNN and the BBC and the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, etc. And my dad was like half asleep over there in his lazy boy chair, but he kept, like, who's that now? And I'm like, well, it's the Los Angeles Times. And he's like, what the hell's going on? Why are you talking to people? So I said, go up on your computer and just search this. And he did. He disappeared for a couple hours, and then at dinner that night with my folks, he said, "Well, there's a lot going on, isn't there?" And like, yeah, a little bit. But the first day of the ban, and again, we have amazing friends at the NHL, and so we were well aware of what was happening, specifically around warmups. But the first day of the ban, we got phone calls from 4 different teams, 4 different NHL clubs that said, send us some tape. And we said, well, there's a ban. And they said, yeah, but we're figuring out ways. And, there's kids clinics and there's other ways. It's not just about warm-ups. So, we were working with everybody right away, in the hopes that the ban was going to be lifted. And because we have some pretty amazing partners, it was 10 days later.
Being the 10th anniversary of Pride Tape, between yourself and the other co-founders, how proud are you, I suppose, is just a simple question of how far Pride Tape has come, and how it's amazing. When I've started this podcast, all I had to thought was, we've got Harbour Lights here, we've got Southern Lights here, we've now got Capital Riot in Canberra as well, which has recently launched, which is an inclusive hockey club. So that's a 3rd inclusive hockey club now. And I just thought, okay, I can tell the stories of the people here, because there's friends of mine that have got amazing stories of how they've found sport, etc., after leaving sport for not feeling welcome and things like that. And now I've got a reach across all different parts of the world. I'm obviously talking to you now in Edmonton, Alberta. In my season 4 next year, I've got my first Swedish guest coming on as well, which is really, really cool. How proud are you of how far Pride Tape has come, and the other co-founders in the past 10 years?
Well, thanks, Andrew. Like, I honestly can't even put it into words. I was mentioning that right now I'm over the holidays, I'll be working on a 10th anniversary presentation. And I think it's something like 3,500 images on my computer from Pride Tape of people all over the world that believe in this. And that's when I can't even put it into perspective, to be honest. Like, there's just so much. And I think, again, for me and for us, are the friendships. Like, again, it almost seems like an exercise in name dropping, to be honest, but it's, a couple weeks ago, I got to have dinner with Justin from the Seattle Kraken, and then Emily from Team Canada last week. We got to get together, and then I was on my way for my day job down to Calgary, and I got a call I got a text from Brandon, a photographer with the Minnesota Wild, and he's like, we haven't met in person. Can we do that? And I was like, I'd love to, but I'm actually in Calgary, and he was in Edmonton. So we're going to figure out when we can actually do that, because, again, for me to meet the people that believe in this is huge. But I like I said, I think a lot of times it's still hard to put into perspective, to be honest with you. But it's something that we're really proud of. And but I do actually have to give a huge shout out to the photographers, at all levels of sport, and parents, or the individuals that are taking pictures of the tape. Because the idea is to create this badge of support from the hockey world to the 2S LGBTQ plus community that just didn't feel welcomed in the sport. So it's very much a visual thing. And as you know, with your podcast, visibility is everything. And, what's interesting is what I do for a living in marketing. This is like the complete opposite, because you've got photographers reaching out and saying, hey, like our friend Micheline, who is the photographer for the Buffalo Sabres and the Rochester Americans in the AHL, like sending me photos. It was Pride night, and I thought you might want to see these photos of Pride tape. And it's just so nice. And it's like, in another world, you'd be trying to get a hold of photos and asking people how much they want for it. It's like, it's like turned the whole, marketing, as Pride tape as a brand, it's kind of turned the whole marketing world on its end, because like I said, we are not Pride tape. I am not Pride tape. The thousands of people, over the 1,000 people that actually contributed to the Kickstarter to make it real, they are, and all the people that actually have the courage to put it on their sticks or wherever they use it, they're the ones that deserve all the credit. But again, it's still honestly mind-boggling.
And over those 10 years as well, it's not just hockey that Pride tape has touched. Is there a sport that when you found out that people were using Pride tape, or Pride tape was becoming involved in, that sort of shocked you? Like, you never thought that sport, was there one sport that you found over the time that you thought, geez, I never thought that Pride tape would be involved in that sport?
Well, certainly baseball, women's softball. Our friend Kirk Walker, who's become a very good friend, who was with the UCLA Bruins for years, now retired from them, but him asking, like, so we would do a strikeout hate night, and we do a great one here in Edmonton with our friends at the Riverhawks in the summer. But working with Kirk and others in baseball, I mean, we still haven't kind of cracked Major League Baseball, which we would love to do. We have a few contacts, but nothing major as of yet. But certainly in women's softball, like seeing their Pride nights emerge and seeing the tape on the bats has been really cool. We did something years ago with minor league baseball out of Florida. They did a whole series of Pride nights, mostly in the South United States. And they shared a document with us that showed the results and all the sellouts and how popular they were and how much it meant. And that was really, that was quite a moment. So I would probably say baseball.
It's a good segue too, because I put out on my story about people replying to the podcast Instagram story with some questions that they could put to you as well. And
Great.
it's working on the fly here. I'll bring it up on my phone. It's someone that you'd know as well, Kevin Jesus.
Kevin. Wow.
And he replied to the story and asked, is there one sport where you think Pride tape could work but hasn't taken hold yet?
It's a great question. Love Kevin, by the way. And Kevin, you need to know this about Kevin, humble guy. When he was working for Global TV, they did the Pride tape Kickstarter video. He was huge behind that. And in fact, Global TV here in Edmonton, we often say that the Pride tape wouldn't exist if it wasn't for them, because they actually did a free campaign across the country to let people know about it. And that's how we were able to raise money for Kickstarter. So love Kevin. And with respect to his question, it's a good question. Again, I'd reiterate that I would love to see it at the major league level for baseball. It hasn't got traction because it actually works so well on the bats. It actually, well, I have one here.
Yeah, it does.
It works better on a baseball bat than it does a hockey stick. So I would love for it to take off there. Curling is another one that's had some just a touch of traction, and I bring up curling because I know Kevin's a huge curler, and we've given him some tape for some of his bonspiels. So yeah, but I think anything, like we had it. We got pictures years ago from the Scottish cycling team. We had heard that it was on the end of the brooms for the Swedish women's Olympic curling team. So I just like to continue to be surprised. I would love some sport to just to showcase it, but I think where it works the best is on a baseball bat. And again, I would love to see it. I would love to see it on somebody's. We've heard about certain players that are very supportive. Love to see just one of them put it on their bats. I was very fortunate through Kirk to meet his best friend Billy Bean before he passed away. We met him at an event in Columbus, and probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And this is funny. He was telling me about his friendship with Henrik Lundqvist, and one of the first pictures we got from the NHL was of Henrik Lundqvist with the pride tape on his stick. And I said, "Oh well, tell Henrik thank you very much from Jeff from Pride Tape." And then all of a sudden he put me on a 3-way text chain with him and Henrik Lundqvist, and I'm going like, what's going on right now? Like, this is so bizarre. But yeah, baseball. Sorry, long-winded answer to a very short question.
No, it's fine. It's good to get those stories where the little hockey fan comes out of you, I suppose, in those moments. Yeah. Kevin's awesome. Like, I've had Kevin on this podcast as a guest, and hit it off straight away. And Kevin gives me a lot of crap for being a Calgary Flames fan, but we have good banter back and forth. And it's crazy that I feel like I class Kevin as a friend, and we haven't met face to face yet. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, next year, I'm hoping to get to Calgary, and I'm going to hit up Kevin to maybe catch up while I'm in Alberta. But he's a beauty, Kevin, absolute beauty.
Well, and I have to tell you that I just looked upstairs before I came on. Somebody gifted me a couple Calgary Flame jerseys from the Winter Classic, and they're Huberdeau jerseys. And of course, Mr. Huberdeau was the first player to leave pride tape on the blade of a stick during a game. It was against the Florida Panthers, who were the first to use it in warm up. And Mr. Huberdeau, when he was playing for the Panthers, had it on a stick and kept it on. So I've always, again, you talk about friendships. I've found that there's been so many connections with people that have become. So I do want to get that jersey signed and give it to you. So that's my goal. That's my goal. But I think with respect to friendships, I feel the very same way about Stuart. We chatted, we would text back and forth through Instagram, but then we finally connected like this virtually. And and then you get to meet somebody in person, which is just amazing. I often say, like, I bought the big lottery ticket yesterday for the big jackpot, and I said, if I win, I just want to travel the world and basically shake everybody's hand that I've connected to Pride Tape with. That's what I would want to do. But yeah, I feel the same way about Stuart and so many others. We've been talking about trying to get to the UK for their Pride Week. I also really want to get to Berlin to meet Martin and Katie and everybody with Hockey is Diversity. They've done so much. They're so incredible, and I'm a big fan of theirs, and they've been so supportive. I just want to meet them in person, and I feel that way about pretty much everyone. So I'm going to a couple of Pride tournaments the spring and summer, just because I want to meet the people that are involved, that started this, because they're what really making the sport more inclusive.
Yeah, that's super cool, and I really appreciate it. I wasn't expecting you to say that about the Huberdeau jersey. It's a really beautiful gesture. Thank you so much.
Also, because I can't have it. I've got probably about 8 to 10 Oiler jerseys, so I think I kind of have to give it to you.
And he did tick over 800 points recently, so he's a super player as well.
Yeah,
as a super
absolutely.
person.
Absolutely.
Kevin did have a follow-up too, and it made me laugh. But I have to ask it. Being the fact that I'm an Aussie and we're a sunbed country and we've got the sand and the surf and all that sort of stuff. He said asking for an Aussie friend, can you make a Speedo out of Pride Tape?
Yeah, why not? Right? Like everybody, has done, everything else with articles of clothing and Pride Tape. So I don't see why not. I don't think maybe I should be the guy to do it, but I'd like to put that challenge out there to you and everyone else in Australia and beyond to make the Pride Tape Speedo.
All right, I'll get in contact with Kevin. We'll try and work something out.
Sure.
Maybe we can get the lifesavers involved down here in Australia.
Yeah, well, there's some really cool fashion shows that some of the teams put on that we see on Instagram, to raise money for their team. So there you go. That's what somebody needs to do.
Vanessa Vargas as well, who was a previous guest, and you might have met Vanessa potentially at Seattle Pride Classic. Another awesome person and such a big supporter of Pride Tape and this podcast as well. She said, looking ahead, what major accomplishments do you envision for Pride Tape in its mission to foster inclusivity, and how can it continue to make a lasting impact?
Well, it's a great question. It's like what we were talking about earlier this time coming, being the whole 10th anniversary and getting very retrospective. We've had those conversations amongst our team where, what do we do now? I mean, there were moments, I'll let you know that we were really questioning what we were doing and what can we do this year differently? I mean, at the end of the day, it's tape on sticks and warm-ups that people notice, and people are doing it a little less. And, and then all of a sudden the ban happened and it gave it another life. I think personally, to answer Vanessa's question, and I brought this up, like, what can I do? I want to, I'm like ecstatic that we got to do this today. I'd love to do more of it. I'd love to tell the stories, not only from my perspective, but the perspective of everybody that supported it. So I'm thinking about writing a book for the 10th anniversary. Again, I'd love to hear your opinion on that as to whether or not I should do it, but really it would be called Love, Hate, and Tape. And it would just be all the experiences and the friendships I've made. And it would really be a testament to the great things that everyone is doing. Another part of the answer too is, like you mentioned, other sports, but we haven't even talked about other places like musicians. Some of the best supporters of Pride Tape and friendships that we've made have been with musicians like Tara Sloan and Max and Ashley from the Arkells, a Canadian rock band, and Canadian rock star Biff Naked, and Chris and Connie from the Tall Pines. The list goes on and on from musicians. I mean, I will say that Max, and his bandmates still use Pride Tape on the underside of their guitars in concert, and again, there's something really interesting about musicians and their desire to use their platform too, in the same way an athlete would. And it's very powerful. The Canadian rock band, The Beaches, when Leandra reached out to me to see if I could meet her and her bandmates down at the Oilers playoff game and bring some Pride Tape. And then the next day there was a festival just outside of Edmonton, and she put it on her mic stand and kind of gave me and Pride Tape a shout out. And I was, again, it was another pinch me moment. Is this really happening? But again, to another lengthy answer for you, Andrew, but I think it's other areas of that, and using the creativity of everyone out there has always surprised us. It will continue to surprise us. And we just want to support people who are interested in doing something with it. Like if we can manage it, if we can get tape to more people, doesn't have to be athletes, can be musicians or whoever else that want. We've supplied it for classes that have done things as a craft, for their Pride celebrations at their school. I think it's pretty endless. It's up to the creativity of the people out there, but there's been some pretty awesome examples of it.
I think a book would be absolutely amazing personally, being able to sit down and read about Pride Tape and things that people obviously wouldn't see, the stories behind it, how Pride Tape has got to 10 years, because it's not an easy thing to get to 10 years. it's a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice in a lot of senses for a lot of people. So that'd be pretty cool to have a book surrounding it. And the musician side of things is something I actually never thought of. When you think about Pride Tape, it's so hockey heavy, I suppose. You don't realize that it is far reaching as far as musicians. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we've had individuals come up to us if we're at an event and giving away Pride Tape. We'll have some individuals say, "Well, I believe in what you're doing, but I don't play sports." And then we've had people say, "But I wrapped it around the railing of my balcony of my apartment," or I was at a volleyball event and the players were saying, like, I wrapped my fingers in it. Canadian football players are saying, like, they actually put trainer's tape in the middle of their shoe to tape down the laces. And some people have put Pride Tape there as well. So again, it's all about their creativity. I will say about the book, I do have a handful of stories that I have kept to myself because they're pretty personal for people, and they're pretty, in some instances, pretty heartbreaking. But there was one instance where I received a call on my cell phone in the summer here, and I was just working my day job out on the Saturday and on the back patio, and it was a hockey mom that told me about an incident regarding their son who used the tape because they believe that hockey is for everyone, and it was a bad scenario. Thankfully, she told me that her son was okay, and she said, "I'm just calling to ask you a favor." And I said, "Absolutely. What's that?" And she says, like, "Please don't ever stop what you're doing." So that's why we're sitting here today, and that's why I continue to go, yeah, to Vanessa's question, what's next? What do we do? Got to do something. And when I left that event in Winnipeg, I really felt compelled to, I think I connected with some people in the room, and I want to connect with more people and talk about why I think this is important, because some great people have told me that it's important, and they want us to keep doing it. So we'll keep doing it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful as well. And I've always thought if I can impact one person with this podcast, it's a job well done. And I'm no doubt Pride Tape's impacted a lot of people across the 10 years. So that's really, really beautiful. Vanessa's last question as well. Is there a particular moment that has significantly influenced your motivations on creating Pride Tape? And if so, what is it and how has it impacted you?
There's been many. One at the very beginning, once the tape was released, I got a phone call from a coach and GM of a provincial junior hockey team who said that there was a young player that was on the train tracks wanting to end his life because he was afraid of coming out and what that might mean for his hockey journey and his relationship with his teammates. Thankfully, the boy was safe, and his teammates found out about this and had heard about the tape. It was, again, right at the very beginning, like 9 years ago, maybe 10 years, close to 10. And they said, "We've heard about this tape. We want to put it on because he had left the team, and because he just didn't feel comfortable in the locker room." And so his teammates found out about it, and they said, we want to put the tape on our sticks to show him that he's our friend and he's our teammate and we support him and we love him. And I was, I actually drove to this town, a small town in Alberta, and on the drive back, I was just really moved, and I was upset, but I was also inspired by the teammates, and then I called, the Pride Tape team members, Dean and Chris and Frank, and I said, I think we're doing something here. Like that was the first real kind of, or the rubber hits the road type of experience with the tape on a team and a player and a coach. And then there's been many with parents and their kids as well. And some people have said some nice things again to us, but it's the other way around. So I just like exactly what you said, Andrew. We said the exact same thing at the beginning. Our goal was always just to help one person, because when we did the Kickstarter, we had no idea what success looked like. We hadn't done a Kickstarter campaign before. So and then we're like, well, can the tape even be made? And then once the tape is made, will anybody want it? Will anybody use it? And we thought if we can just help one person and maybe they can help one person and so on, it builds from there. I think, again, just to answer Vanessa's second part of the question, what can we do more of, or how can we take it to another level? I think we have to get in front of the players at the highest levels to remind them or tell them for the first time what this really means. Because I'm not, and I talked to Justin with the Kraken a bit about that over dinner, that we're not sure that the whole story is being told, because many of the people that might use it, they're not necessarily following Pride Tape on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So they don't see all the heartfelt, posts and messages from other folks and what it's doing, and they need to be told. And that, again, whether it's a book or a speaking engagement, whatever it is, I think that there can be an opportunity where we just help try and educate people a little bit more on how important this is, so that when we say 3 steps forward, there is no 2 steps back. Because, again, our mission has always been, we created Pride Tape so that one day we don't need Pride Tape. I will ask you a question, if I may. And that's only because I was asked this from my brother-in-law, who arrived last night to stay with us for Christmas. And we were talking a little bit about Pride Tape, because we were talking about, speaking with you. And he said to me very innocently, like, if you had come up with Pride Tape right now, would you still do it? And I thought it was a really, really interesting question, because I think you could answer that 2 ways, in that there may not ever be a time where it's more important than right now, but I'm not really sure that I would, because I'm not sure that it would be accepted by the people that it was accepted by 10 years ago, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your answer on that. Like, if you came up with this idea, how comfortable would you feel? And I guess that you could also replace the words Pride Tape with your Pride Podcast, right? Like,
yeah,
would you do this starting today versus when you started, based on what's going on out there?
It's an interesting question, and it's when you're talking about rubber on the pavement, I had that sort of moment too, because in season 1, I wanted to just focus on Australian clubs and people from Australia. And then season 2, it sort of got a bit of traction. I ventured out across to the US and Canada. And it was that rubber hitting the pavement moment where I had feedback from people and messages after having guests on. And I was making an impact. I was actually touching people across the world. And it might not be the biggest podcast out there, like a Spittin' Chicklets or something like that, but it is making impact to people at that grassroots level. In terms, would I do it now? I'm not sure. Like, it's this season 3, I wanted to heavily focus on the trans community, and I've done that throughout season 3, because I felt like it really deserved that. And given the current climate across the world, like, trans people and athletes are getting attacked left, right, and center, and there's no need for it, because it's a non-issue ultimately. And when I talk to trans athletes on this podcast, they just tell me that they just want to play hockey, and a lot of the time they're welcomed with open arms into whatever league and hockey team that they play for. It's an interesting question. Maybe I would still do it just because I feel like it's that important. But there are moments, as we sort of touched on before, where sometimes I sit back and I think to myself, so like in January, I suppose I have a break for the podcast. I only really do episodes 11 months out of the 12 because I just want to have that month's break to sort of regroup, because you see a lot of things across the socials, the comments, and just the nonsense of hate, where people actually haven't even listened to your podcast to get an understanding of what the person's going through, their story in sport. I would probably still do it now, just because I feel like it's been a good voice for especially trans athletes, the podcast, to actually let people know that, hey, trans people aren't the evil sporting taking over the world type of that they've sort of been made out to feel like throughout the world.
Yeah, I'm living in Alberta, and it's a bit of the epicenter for the issue in Canada right now, and it's infuriating. Like, again, I feel exactly the same way that you do. I just, you get to the base of why we came up with Pride Tape. I actually had some people that I've been close to my whole life go, why are you doing that? Why do we need that? And it's not till you start talking to people about their stories about how they don't feel included. And, as an ally, white male, Canadian, growing up playing hockey, I've never experienced any type of hate. So when we started talking about this through the precursor project, No Homophobes, it's just like, well, again, we just felt we had to do something around sport, because it's just like, well, why can't everybody just enjoy, the sport that we grow up loving? And I wish I was a lot more articulate, but occasionally I find these quotes or see something that just resonates with me, and I have to hang on to. And I have one here that I keep on my phone, and that's from Megan Duggan, who, U.S. Olympian hockey player. She did a speaking engagement with the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think a couple of years ago, and said it's difficult to understand inclusion if you've never been excluded. And that just personally resonated with me. And it's like, I think there's often times where I don't even have the right to get into the conversation, except maybe from the perspective of just human decency. Like, I just think that, like, how can you, like, again, it goes back to the love versus hate. And how can you just outwardly hate somebody you don't even know? Like, it's just, I don't know. I'm just taking it at a very base level, but it really bothers me. And another thing with respect to tape, we've been talking about what do we do next with the tape around messaging and social media, and how can we help, is I see some of the negativity, some of the comments that we get around tape. And a good friend of mine, Kristen, said this to me the other day. He goes, and they're just talking about tape. Like, imagine how they feel about people. And I never thought about it that way. And I'm like, you're right. And so when people go, why do we even need this? It's like, well, I sure as hell wish we didn't. But the fact that there's people that can be so hateful around a 6-colored roll of hockey tape, imagine how they're treating individuals, and we see how they are, and it's sickening. So again, I wish we could do 3 steps forward, no steps back, but we might have to get, again, this is probably part of Vanessa's question, but I think off the top, I was talking to you about, we go where the love is, and we try and focus on positivity, and we don't want to get wallowed down in the hate, because we're just kind of emulating the haters. But sometimes I think we need to get more serious. And that's where I think we need to reach out to the players and the sports and the people that have influence, that can do something, and do more of that. I got this beautiful piece this week. So the Love Wins jerseys that we do.
Yep.
Right. So I got my autographed McDavid.
Oh, that's amazing.
And we got that from all the Oiler leadership. And what happened there was they reached out through the organization to us, specifically Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman, and said, what else can we do? And to your earliest point, we talked about the strength in just people, the visual of people putting on the tape. When the NHL sent us the first visuals of the players actually using the tape or putting on the tape with no dialogue, no sound except the unfurling of the tape, we were like, that's a lot more powerful than we ever thought it would be. And that inspired that message about how do you tell someone you love them without using words. Like, that is showing that support and that visibility. But certainly what you're doing, what we're trying to do, and what others are doing with the organization of clubs like the Harbor Lights and the Southern Lights, I mean, just keep doing more of it. There are more inclusive teams now than ever. It almost seems like every week there's either a new team or a new logo coming out, and that's so great. Just making the sport more available to everyone. And hopefully, I mean, I'm optimistic and hopeful because I do go to the rinks and I see the younger kids, and I kind of experience their attitudes, and thankfully it's more positive than it was in my generation. So again, I think we got to, just keep working harder at it and maybe getting a little bit more serious. And I'll try and be a little bit more serious in the new year.
And allyship is important from people like yourself. And even I look at the rink that I play in here in Melbourne, and it's very inclusive, and the people that own it and run it do a good job to try and keep that inclusivity. Just like even allowing a team like Southern Lights to play at the rink is pretty huge in itself. But the environment that they create around the rink is really, really strong. So allyship is super important. And I always tell people, and I've mentioned on this podcast about an incident that happened when I played Aussie rules footy here when I was 16, and I was a closeted bi kid. And some of the stories that you hear after you tell your story, other people tell you, it's quite it's quite sad, and it gives a new perspective. And if people want to listen, they might realize why we have these podcasts and why the Pride tape does exist. One of the things you touched on before, and it's just my mind and how it works. When you were launching Pride tape and the design of Pride tape, did you have any questions about how it would actually look on the stick and how it would actually work because when I sort of first looked at it, I was like, how does it actually work to wrap around a stick that looks so good? In terms of like the manufacturing of it, how much went into that, I suppose?
Well, that's a great question. Me and my colleagues at Calder Bateman Communications, working for a marketing firm and working with Dr. Chris Wells, I was, originally, I could tell you, like, Pride tape would be long gone because the first idea was a billboard campaign about a photograph of a player taping up their hockey stick with white tape and then going in there with Photoshop and making the tape the different colors, right?
Yeah.
And then I was driving to work one morning and I thought, well, they have hockey tape with repeat patterns on it, like the Hockey Canada logo, the Batman logo, et cetera. And I'm like, if they can repeat graphics on the tape, I wonder if they could repeat colors. So we started doing some exploration, and that's when we engaged the NHL to talk about tape companies, because we had to go with the company that they were working with because it had to be of a certain caliber, quality, because they couldn't have it falling off player sticks, right? So my friend Suzanne, who I was working with at the time, she spent quite a while with a whole bunch of like white rolls of hockey tape and 6 magic markers, 6 colors. And what we found out from the manufacturers that it had to be like every 6 inches was when it would change. And because it was like 6 colors, and the change happened at 36 inches. So that's when the design would repeat. And that's why when everybody asked us why we didn't go to change to the Progress Pride flag with the other colors, was because 11 colors versus 6 wouldn't work on the repeat changeover on the stick. And then we got it to where it looked really nice on one side, but at some point the colors got to change. I didn't sleep for 2 months waiting for the tape made, because I was going to go, it's going to look so stupid when it changes colors, when people put it, if they put it haphazardly on the stick. And it's not going to work on goalie sticks. So I was like, and I love goalies and my friends are goalies, and I'm going, it's not going to work on a goalie stick. So I did not sleep while the first rolls were being made. And then all the photos, I mentioned Henrik Lundqvist, all the photos that came in from the NHL at the very beginning were of goalies for some reason. I don't know why, but it was like, and I'm like, oh my God, like it doesn't look as nice as, like, on Johnny Gaudreau's stick there. And so I was just like, it's not going to work. It's not going to be great. And then everybody started commenting about how they loved the haphazard design, like how they liked when it switched from color to color and it just looked really cool. But yeah, we spent a couple of months with white hockey tape and colored magic markers just to figure out how it was going to work.
That's super cool. It's really cool to get those behind the scenes sort of insights into how it all came to bear. That's just my mind just running off there thinking, geez, it'd be cool to see how it works, because
then we got the tape produced, and I'm in Edmonton, Dean's in Vancouver, and he accepted the pallets of tape after it was printed, because he was going to be sending it out to the Kickstarter folks. And anyway, he called me, and so 10 years ago we weren't doing FaceTime or anything like that, so there was no visuals. And he called me and he goes, it doesn't work. And I mean, like, and I just said, what do you mean it doesn't work? And he's like, it doesn't work. It doesn't look good. It doesn't work well on the stick. And I'm like, well, it's tape. Like, what do you mean? And my heart and my guts and my throat, it all just dropped. And then he goes, oh, wait, hang on, wait. No, it's good. It's fine. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, we got over $30,000 worth of tape we're going to have to refund, and it's never going to happen, and all the rest of it. And I will tell you another quick little behind the scenes story. I think it was Alice that contacted us from the Harbor Lights at the very beginning. And we were doing the tape a certain way from the Kickstarter, and then it changed because we needed to make it better, et cetera. But anyway, occasionally, as we learned with tape, that one tape goes bad. Like, you can't have tape sitting on a shelf for years because the adhesive dries out. So we actually, when we make the first 10,000 rolls, we actually threw a lot away originally because there wasn't a huge uptake on it.
Yep.
Right. So, and then the other thing found out is that at some point with the production, the way it worked is somewhere in a roll of tape, it could show the stitching of where, like, the roll ended and another one started. Long and short was Alice reached out to us and said, this tape's not very good. And we were like, oh my God, like, they must, like, somehow they got a bad batch or some bad rolls. And it's like that, it's like milk. And so anyway, we apologized and we sent a bunch of all new tape back, some free tape, et cetera. And then Australia, it's so expensive to ship things there for us that we were like eating the cost of the shipping. Cause again, it's like, we can't charge $30 a roll in Australia for this tape. So, but Australia was like really, really important because, when Alice contacted us back, and I think that's when we met Stuart too, that they were very appreciative and we were extremely appreciative. And then it just went from there. But there was a very quick moment in time where we're like, we might lose this relationship in Australia before it even starts. And that would have been horrible. But so again, there's a whole bunch of stories of like that tipping point of when something is, successful versus not. And it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, that's a cool story. And Alice is a beauty as well. And it's one of those things, I suppose, when you're talking about the book, those are the sort of stories that
Right.
could be potentially in the book that people
Yeah.
don't know about, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
there's been stuff like the mother son that, there was a pride tape ban very early on that was generated up through a minor hockey league in the States, and a mother and son fought it because the son liked to use the tape, and so they actually went in front of the board of a minor hockey association, and it was overturned, and they won, and they were allowed to use pride tape, and that was an amazing story of people again that just believe in it. There was the hockey dad that called me, who told me that his daughter came out at the age of 14, and the parents of the teammates came to the father and said, "We don't want her on the team anymore, and if she stays on the team, she has to change in a different dressing room, and we don't want her in the hot tub or the pool at the hotel when we're traveling to play." And the father was obviously like heartbroken, right? And called us and just said, "What do we do about this?" And then we actually got in touch with a couple of other teams through some guidance from some inclusive teams, and she found a much better place to play. But the fact that she even had to go through that, and the dad had to go through that, it was just, you're just like, why? This is ridiculous. And but yeah, there's been a whole bunch of those types of stories that we'd like to share. If it, like to your point earlier, if it does help one person, if we can help one other person, we're happy. And Dean and I would always say, when we would get these stories, we would talk to each other on the phone about it. And then we always usually would end our conversation with, if that's the only thing that has happened or will happen and Pride Tape ends tomorrow, we're good. Like if we can help, again, one situation, with any, I used to say, if we can help like one young person, it's not one young person, it's everybody. Like if we
yeah.
can, if we can change the situation for the better for somebody that now is just like yourself, absolutely loving playing the game, and really getting into it, hey, that's a monumental win.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I always think when I hear stories like that as well, it's so tragic and sad. But I always think to myself, you're not born hateful.
Mhm.
Hateful is something that
Yeah.
is taught and people learn. So if one thing Pride Tape and I suppose this podcast can do is to combat the hate and try and educate people, and teach people to not be hateful. Um, One of the things I actually wanted to touch on before we sort of wrap it up is I'm heavily involved in the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League here,
Mhm.
and it's very inclusive. It has trans athletes playing in the actual league. It's obviously the premier league here in Australia. We do have Sarah Edney playing in the league as a former number one pick in the old CWHL,
Wow.
who's
Wow.
made her home here in Australia, which is amazing, absolutely awesome. I just wanted to ask you in terms of the PWHL and the growth of the PWHL and how I suppose Pride Tape interconnects with the PWHL and the exposure that you get through that, and that relationship between the two, because I feel like women's sport is such a totally different beast, in terms of hockey fandom and being inclusive. I find that across all different women's sports. How was Pride Tape felt with that relationship with the PWHL?
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned the CWHL, Andrew, because when we started 10 years ago, I went down to meet Jillian from You Can Play at the time in Calgary, and meet some other individuals. That's how I met the Calgary Pioneers, and Michael and Hamish and Justin, but I also met Erica Crum, who was playing for the Calgary Inferno at the time, and then met some other players from the Inferno, and then got to meet Harrison Brown, who was playing for the Riveters at the time, as well as Rebecca Morris and Tara Hoffman, who was later playing for the Toronto Six. So when from the CWHL to the NWHL, it was seamless. When the PWHL started, uh, got a phone call immediately from Jana Hefford and Brian Burke and said, can we get a case of tape for every team, and they specifically said have available for them not only to use in their pride games, but use it whenever they want. Like, so there will be no, like, when they can use it, when they can't. And through that, again, it was fun because, as I mentioned last Saturday, Emily Clark has become a great friend. I met her through Coach Kevin with the Heroes Hockey program in Calgary, which is a national program, which is amazing. And then after the game, I went to go say hello to Emily and meet some of her family members. I actually ran into Paige from the Oilers that we do the Pride Nights with, and she introduced me to a couple of other PWHL players, and they're like, and she was like, "This is Jeff from Pride Tape," and they're like, "Oh, cool," and it's just so great to meet you. But the PWHL, thanks to their earlier leagues, CWHL and NWHL, we always say that if it wasn't for them, Pride Tape would not exist. That's the absolute truth, because at the very beginning, I wouldn't go so far as to call it resistance, but some hesitancy from the male hockey leagues and organizations. But with, like, for example, the Edmonton Girls Hockey Association, they wanted a lot of tape and the young girls were using it. And a lot of that was coming through because of the leadership and mentorship of the CWHL. So again, PWHL relationship is strong. And again, as the nature of what we do here with Pride Tape, I don't pick favorites or teams necessarily, but because again, all 32 NHL clubs have been incredibly supportive. So, my favorite hockey player is Emily Clark. I will say that, with the Ottawa Charge and Team Canada, again, because of the friendship and again, just with what women's hockey has done and how supportive they've been. Absolutely love the PWHL. I was out buying merch. When I go out Christmas shopping, I end up buying more stuff for myself than I do for other people. So I went and bought myself a bunch of PWHL and Team Canada merch. So, yeah.
No, that's cool. It's the PWHL is definitely making an impact around the world, and I'm hoping that they get a Calgary team at some stage. I'm sort of like an Ottawa Charge fan, but I haven't really sort of jumped fully on board because I'm thinking Calgary might potentially get a team. But it's great to hear that Pride Tape has that relationship with the PWHL and women's hockey, I suppose, as a whole. It's really important, especially. Yeah. I've always said that the growth of sport around the world is women's sport. That's where I feel like the growth is. So it's great to see Pride Tape heavily involved in that.
Well, we, as you know, with our friend Nora and at the NHL, we've done some Pride Cups. We got another one coming up in the new year. But at these events, we've had some great support. We do it sometimes we'll do a ball hockey game here with the Oilers between the Rage and the Pioneers, and we did that at the NHL All-Star Game in Toronto. And sometimes it'll be an ice hockey event like we did in Boston. But in Toronto and Edmonton's instance, we had player Emily and Emerance and Aaron and Genevieve, and had people coming out and playing in the ball hockey games with us, showing their support. And I don't have it behind me, but in the other room I do have my signed Emily Clark Pride Tape hockey stick, which is something I really cherish and I'm really proud of.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. And you did mention Brian Burke. I think it's really cool to get people like Brian involved, and people that obviously know Brian's story with his son as well, and the background there. But I listen to Brian Burke every other week when he appears on Jeff Merrick's show. I tune in and have a listen. He's a no nonsense, but just a wonderful human. So it's great to see that Brian Burke is heavily.
I do have to tell you one thing, and I know we've been talking way too long here, so I apologize.
That's cool.
Carry on, but I have to tell you the Pride Tape story. But when we were starting, it might have even been this week or last 10 years ago. I drove down to your Calgary Flames, and when Brian Burke was GM of the Flames, and wanted to show him the idea of Pride tape. So this is while the Kickstarter was going on. It was 6 different colored rolls of tape on the stick. And I went to go down to talk to him about You Can Play and about the idea of Pride tape and hopefully get his support. And this was through our friend Jillian, who was with You Can Play, but also my best friend Bill Ranford, who's coach of the LA Kings. And it just so happened that the Kings were playing the Flames. So the night before, Bill and I went out for dinner, and I said, I'm going to meet Brian Burke tomorrow morning, and I'm really, really nervous. Like he seems like, I don't know. I'm just really nervous. And I didn't find out till later. So I went and met Brian. It was a really great meeting. He invited me up to the box to watch both the Flames and Kings practice that morning before the game. And he told me that Bill had, so Bill didn't have to be at the rink yet because the Kings practice were second, but Bill went in early that morning to catch Brian and say, by the way, my friend, the person you're meeting this morning is my friend Jeff. We grew up together and spoke about the friendship and stuff. So he helped me out tremendously. And he goes, Bill came here early to vouch for you this morning before our meeting. And I was like, oh, thank God, but people in hockey are wonderful. And that's where it all started with Brian and, during the Kickstarter. And then the Oilers found out about it, and then they used it in their skills competition and helped put us over the top. So yeah, it's just, it's been a wild 10 years. And, but I have to applaud you, Andrew, and what you're doing, because it's this visibility that's making the difference. Again, we just make tape, you make it powerful.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I really do. It's amazing though, like when you tell that story about meeting Brian, and it's almost like full circle with your friend, and then connecting with Brian and getting it off the ground. It's a cool story.
There is one other. Again, we could tell these forever, but I had asked through a friend, like, there was an Eastern European hockey player that I just have admired forever and thought he was a wonderful person and just said, hey, I mean, very offhanded, right? Very innocent. Like, hey, I've got this multicolored tape, Pride tape, and could he maybe throw it on his stick and get a picture of it and just to help our case? And it was like, love to, but absolutely not. Today, they actually passed the law against same-sex marriage in their country. And it puts their, family who's over there potentially at risk. And I never really thought about it that way. Again, it's maybe too naive. But then 1 year later, they were the captain that told the entire team to put it on their stick, including theirs, during warm-up. And it was the only team that ever had every single player use it during warm-up. And that's when, Andrew Ference, who's again become a great friend and major part of Pride tape, said that, everybody's on their own schedule. Like you just gotta know that. And one example of that is there was a major retailer in the United States that said, sorry, we can't carry your tape because it might offend some of our customers. And we're like, what? Like what? And then when I posted that, people were outraged and wanted to know, who the store was, because they wanted to boycott it. And I didn't want to do that. And because, again, thinking about what Andrew said, that everybody's on their own schedule here. And I think it was a year and a half later, they called back and said, we want to carry your tape across country. So it's like, sometimes it just takes just more support. And I think, what we're doing has thankfully led in part to what the Harbor Lights and Southern Lights are doing, what you're doing, and you're now inspiring a whole bunch of people all over the world. I totally agree that I look forward to you talking to everybody around the world. I got to speak with John Lee Olsen, pro goaltender in Denmark, and he told me, he just said, I want to have the courage to tell my story in the hopes that it may give someone else the courage to tell theirs. And I have that now, that quote in our presentation. It's very simple, very clean, very powerful. And I think what you're doing is even when you don't hear back all the stories, you're impacting. I can guarantee you that you're impacting so many people around the world that you're never even going to hear of, but it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and I think just the guests as well. When you talk about that, there's something powerful in the guests actually being able to maybe talk about something they've never spoken about before, and sort of getting it off their chest. Maybe it's also quite powerful as well. The one question that I ask all of my guests, and I have to ask you as well before we wrap it up, is I suppose over the last 10 years or just your time in hockey, what's your proudest moment been within queer hockey?
Wow. It's the moments, I'll call them the side events of the side moments of the events I've been involved with, the one-on-one conversations with unsuspected people. Like, for example, I'll give you one, and I'll tell you that there's tons of them. I'm at the Oilers Pride game, and they were kind enough to give us a box seats for the game, and I'm going into that section, and I'm meeting one of the ushers and the workers there, and they got into conversation about who I was and what I was doing and what was happening that night, and they had mentioned, like, they just broke down and talked about what the tape meant to them personally. And this person mentioned that it actually brought them and their father together for the first time in years. The discussion around the tape, and it was a relationship that had fallen apart. And because of this, and because of what the Oilers were doing, it helped that bond to regenerate. And again, I would classify all those things as the quiet moments, with like, back to like, if we can help one person.
Yep.
It wasn't like, it's not standing in front of a room and talking to a whole bunch of people. It's connecting with one person where they share with you that what you've done or been a part of has made a big difference in their life. So I would say that, and thankfully there's been a bunch of those.
That's really powerful. It really is. It's really special and really powerful. Anything I suppose for people that might be new to even this podcast or Pride Tape, where can they find Pride Tape? Where can they find you across the socials? All those sorts of things.
Yeah, we're at pridetape.com. That's where you can get the Pride Tape, and in North America it's at a lot of stores, but it's easiest in Australia and elsewhere to just maybe pick it up off the website. Instagram is where I hang out for Pride Tape. I create the posts there, and I enjoy doing it. And I think just one last thing I would say that I'm going to try and challenge everyone with in 2026 is, like, what's your Pride Tape? Like, I don't want to call it a fluke how all this came about, but certainly right time, right place with a lot of people, including Brian Burke and others. I've been very fortunate that way. We have been, but I think it's like if we can do this, if this has come about and impacted and maybe helped inspire you and helped inspire Harbor Lights and Southern Lights, it's like everybody can figure out what their inspiration piece is to help one person. And hopefully the stories we share on social will, again, a lot of it is reposting. I wish I was that clever. But it's a lot of the stories out there are people that are making a huge difference, and we're grateful for it.
It is 10 years of Pride Tape. what's on the horizon for Jeff McLean? What's on the horizon for Pride Tape in the near future?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we created Pride Tape so one day we don't need Pride Tape, but then we kind of go, what if it doesn't exist anymore? So for me, as I mentioned earlier, I would like to try and help amplify the great stories that we hear from people, like whether that's book speaking engagements, doing more of this with you, help promoting you and others and other tournaments. Like, for example, there's always fundraisers that come up on social of inclusive teams that are looking to raise money to exist. So if we can help try and do more of that, again, just try and give a bigger voice to everyone and amplify the visibility that we have and that the others are doing. Hopefully it just becomes a place where everybody feels accepted and welcome to play the sports they love.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we are on different ends of the spectrum in terms of weather, from what we have here in summer in Australia to what you've got there. I know that Calgary had some wild weather and some highway problems recently.
Yes.
What's it like in Edmonton right now?
It's very, very cold. It's minus the high today when we woke up was minus 29 without the wind chill. So you don't keep your car outside. You either keep it plugged in or you have it in a garage, and it's very, very cold. The wind adds an extra like minus 5 to 10. So the other day I think they said it was minus 40 with the wind chill, and so when you're shoveling snow in that, it's a bit brutal. But we get a couple spells of that over the winter, but you just get used to it. But when you want to look at the positives, we do have a lot of outdoor hockey rinks, so when the weather gets a little bit nicer, we do have lots of sheets of ice outside that we can play on.
Yeah, that is the jealous part that we have over here, that you've got the outdoor rinks. It's funny though. One thing you just mentioned, your garage, and one thing we don't even think about over here is garage heaters. Do you have a garage heater?
Well, it's funny because when we bought this house, it was actually there was a wood stove in the garage that the people took with them, and we never like hooked that back up. But yesterday we were going, should we go get, like, it's not heated. It's not a heated garage. It's a separate building. So it's pretty frosty in there too. For example, when you don't have enough room in the fridge for all your Christmas beverages, you can't even put them, because typically you could just put them outside because it's far too cold for that. They'll all burst and explode. And you can't. And so you go, well, at least you can put them in the garage because it's a little warmer. You can't even do that right now because everything will. I went out there this morning and to let you know that there was a beverage in my car that I'd forgotten about that exploded. So it's like when it gets a bit warmer, I'll be cleaning that up. So yeah,
No.
it's a different world. It's a different challenges.
Yeah, I can imagine. Jeff McLean, thank you so much for giving up your time and just jumping on the podcast and having a chat. I know you mentioned before that we've been going for a while, but I think it deserves a space to have a chat about Pride Tape and all the good stuff that the past 10 years has brought to not only hockey, but expanded out to sports. And as you did touch on, musicians as well. Hopefully people enjoy this chat and just a bit of a chilled chat about your journey and Pride Tape and the podcast and how we all interconnect now, and how we all become friends from all different parts of the world, just connecting through inclusiveness, Pride Tape, this podcast, the clubs. So from myself, ending season 3, thank you so much for jumping on and giving up your time today.
Anytime, Andrew. Happy to do it. Happy to do it again. And thank you and all your guests for the mentions of Pride Tape and the support. We're here to help each other and just make sports a lot more inclusive for people. So thank you.
Absolutely. That is the end of season 3 of the Pride and Puck podcast. I am Andrew McDougall, your host. That is Jeff McLean, co-founder of Pride Tape. Have a great Christmas, New Year, a safe one. And we will be back in 2026 with season 4 of the Pride and Puck podcast. Until then, we'll speak to you next year. Ciao.